You think that thin line in the sky is just water vapor? It's a multi-million-dollar metal beast screaming at 400 knots, holding hundreds of lives and controlled by a mind that has forgotten how to sleep on Earth. You are about to become that mind. Part 1, Level 1, the student pilot, the cost of the dream. You show up to a small airport on the edge of town on a Saturday morning. The building is not what you expected. It is not sleek, modern, or impressive. It is a single-story structure with faded carpet and a front desk covered in logbooks and pamphlets about introductory flights. A vending machine sits in the corner, unrestocked for weeks, under a wobbling ceiling fan. You are 19, 35, or 52. It doesn't matter. Everyone starts here, handing over a credit card for the first of many payments that will quietly rearrange your entire financial life. Welcome to Shadow POV, where we dismantle the romance of reality. If you want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, subscribe now. Your support gives us the momentum to uncover the next levels. Your instructor is a 23-year-old kid with 400 flight hours. Using you as a stepping stone to the airlines, he walks you to a Cessna 172 older than you are. It's paint chipped and wheel fairings cracked. It smells like avigas, vinyl, and decades of nervous sweat. You climb into a cockpit that looks like a museum. He runs through the checklist. You taxi out. Your hands shake. He says, push the throttle forward. The engine roars. The ground blurs. And then the wheels leave the pavement. For about 4 seconds, everything in your life makes sense. That feeling costs $180 an hour. You will chase it for years, practicing takeoffs and landings until the pattern feels like a prison. From an educational standpoint, Level 1 is a brutal psychological filter. The high cost and endless repetition are designed to weed out romantic dreamers from actual operators. Part 2, the first solo. No one is coming to save you, but no amount of watching perfect landings can prepare your mind for the sudden fracture that is about to split your reality in two. Then one morning, your instructor unbuckles his seatbelt, opens the door, and steps out of the airplane. He looks at you and says, "Take it around the pattern 3 times." He closes the door. You are alone in an aircraft for the first time. The right seat is empty. No one is gonna save you. You taxi to the runway, and your legs are trembling on the rudder pedals, and you push the throttle forward. The plane lifts off lighter than it's ever felt because its weight is gone, and you climb into the sky completely alone. Realizing that no one on the ground can help you now, you land. It isn't pretty, but you land. You taxi back, and he's standing on the ramp grinning. You climb out. He shakes your hand, and someone cuts the back of your shirt with scissors, because that's the tradition. You stand there in the sun, holding a piece of your own shirt, feeling something you will spend the rest of your career trying to feel again. The empty right seat is a violent psychological shift. Until this moment, your safety was an illusion anchored to an authority figure. When that weight vanishes, accountability shifts entirely inward. The lighter aircraft accelerates faster, climbing with a sudden, alarming agility that mirrors the suddenness of your isolation. The shirt-cutting tradition isn't just a celebration of survival. It is the physical shedding of dependence. You are no longer just operating a machine. You have crossed the threshold into absolute self-reliance, where every choice is yours alone. Part 3, Level 2, the private pilot, the burden of passengers. Yet, that euphoria of independence is merely a fleeting peak before the systematic weight of reality settles into your logbook. You have your certificate, 60 hours in your logbook, maybe 70. You passed the check ride with a designated pilot examiner who interrogated you about weather, airspace, and emergencies for 2 hours on the ground. Then watched you fly for another hour and a half while scribbling on a clipboard. You made minor mistakes, but you recovered well, and he passed you anyway. You are now legally allowed to carry passengers, yet you are acutely aware of how little you actually know. You take your friends flying. They are excited. You are terrified of looking incompetent. You plan obsessively and check the weather 4 times. You taxi out, take off, and your friend says, "This is amazing." You feel like a god for 15 minutes until you hit turbulence and your passenger turns green, throwing up in the parking lot. After landing, welcome to general aviation. You fly to field diners on weekends, escaping the ordinary weight of a cubicle at sunset because the light at altitude is uncapturable. You are burning money, but you found the thing some spend lifetimes searching for. Sitting at 500 feet in a 40-year-old airplane, burning 8 gallons an hour. This level introduces a dangerous psychological phase. You have just enough license to put yourself in danger, but not enough experience to see the traps. Carrying passengers is a heavy cognitive burden. The sky ignores your ego. The true test comes when you choose humility over performance, deciding to cancel a flight when the elements slightly cross your personal limits. Part 4, Level 3, the instrument-rated pilot, the gray abyss. But choosing humility on a clear day is an easy luxury compared to the blinding horror of having the horizon violently ripped away from your senses. You go back to training because the private certificate isn't enough. You want to fly in clouds, to fly at night without worrying about getting trapped above an overcast layer. You want to be a real pilot, not a fair weather hobbyist who cancels every time the ceiling drops below 0 feet. So you start instrument training and it breaks you. Flying instruments means flying without looking outside. You wear a plastic visor that blocks everything except the instrument panel. Your entire world shrinks to 6 gauges: airspeed, attitude, altitude, turn coordinator, heading, vertical speed. You scan them in a pattern over and over. Your instructor talks to air traffic control while you desperately try to hold a heading within 2 degrees and an altitude within 100 feet while configuring radios, briefing the approach plate, and copying vectors. The airplane is bouncing through actual clouds. You can't see anything outside except suffocating gray. It is the hardest thing you have ever done. You fail constantly, bust altitudes, and fly through headings. You get behind the airplane, meaning the machine is flying you. You fly in actual instrument conditions. The clouds swallow you, and you realize with complete clarity that if these instruments fail right now, you will die because your inner ear lies about which way is up. You trust the gauges anyway. You break out at 400 feet and the runway is right in front of you. You feel a satisfaction that has nothing to do with fun and everything to do with hard competence. Part 5, Level 4, the commercial pilot professional poverty. But the immense satisfaction of conquering your own brain in the soup evaporates the second you realize that a piece of paper confirming your competence does not translate into a functional career. You have hit 250 hours and passed another check ride. You hold a commercial pilot certificate, legally allowing you to be paid to fly. The irony is that almost nobody hires a commercial pilot with 250 hours. The credential is just an entry token to a grueling, low-paying layer of the industry. You drag heavy advertising banners at 500 feet over crowded summer beaches while tourists look up. You haul skydivers to 10,000 feet in a beat-up Cessna 182 with the door completely removed. dumping passengers and diving straight back down 14 times a day. You fly pipeline patrols alone in a low-wing Piper for hours, tracking oil lines across flat, dead landscapes with nothing but engine vibrations and your own dark thoughts. You live with 3 roommates, eat basic ramen, and earn an entry-level income of $25. $0 a year. Level 4 is where pure romance dies and industrial utility begins. The market exploits your desperation for flight time, turning your passion into a mechanical grind. You begin to view every 10th of an hour in your logbook as raw currency, a brick in the wall built to reach the safety of the airlines. The threat here is resentment. If you let poverty and repetitive exhaustion make you bitter, you start cutting corners where the margin for error is non-existent. Part 6. Level 5. The Certified Flight Instructor. The Cycle of Knowledge. When the loneliness of tracking pipelines over dead dirt begins to hollow you out, you realize your only escape from the lower tier is to descend right back to where your financial bleeding first started. You become an instructor. You walk back into the exact same flight school lobby, greeted by the same faded carpet, the same unstocked vending machine, and the same wobbly ceiling fan, except now you are sitting in the right seat, staring at a terrified student who looks exactly like you did years ago. You teach them how to maintain a heading, how to recover from an uncoordinated stall, and how to land without compressing their spine. You hear your old instructor's voice leaking out of your own mouth. More right rudder. Watch your airspeed. You're behind the airplane. This is how the system survives. Passing tribal knowledge down through decades in a vibrating metal box. You are here strictly to survive the 500-hour math equation required by global airline safety mandates. You have 400 hours. At a grueling 80 hours a month, it will take over a year of checking logbooks obsessively under low wages. But something subtle shifts, breaking down complex aerodynamic execution forces, a profound cognitive override within you. You develop predictive situational awareness, anticipating disaster 3 seconds before your student panics. The hours are the legal currency, but the absolute mastery of human error is the real payload. Part 7, Level 6, the Regional First Officer, the $20 million simulator. But mastering human error in a single engine trainer is entirely isolated from the industrialized reality of managing 76 lives at 400 knots. You finally hit the magical 1,500 hours and cross the regulatory barrier required to enter the regional aviation system. You apply to carriers like Endeavor, Republic, or SkyWest, operating under major mainline brands. The shift from individual flight to automated transport is a violent psychological shock. You endure a relentless training curriculum, sweating through your uniform inside a $20 million full-motion simulator designed to break your individual instincts. You earn your type rating in a regional jet, stepping onto the line with glass flight decks and thrust management systems. Your first real day is surreal. You sit next to a captain with 12,000 hours who silently monitors your input. The operational cadence is brutal. You spend your life on reserve, waiting inside a cramped airport crash pad for the phone to ring. Given 2 hours to report, you fly 4 exhausting legs a day through freezing weather and turbulent airspace, watching 15 identical airports blur into a singular, monotonous haze. You sleep in a cheap twin bed next to a snoring stranger from a different carrier. At level 6, you are no longer an adventurer. You are a cog in a high-consequence socio-technical machine. Your survival depends strictly on crew resource management and absolute adherence to standardized flows. You trade your independence for structured stability, keeping your eyes on the horizon. Part 8, Level 7, the major airline first officer, the golden cage. But surviving the metabolic grind of the regionals is just the final toll you pay before a single phone call suddenly pushes you into the inner circle of the aviation aristocracy. You get the call from a major carrier, Delta, United, or American. You pass the psychological evaluations, the background checks, and the grueling sim assessments. You are hired, and you instantly feel like you have been granted citizenship into an entirely different country. Training takes 3 months. Force in a new type rating like the Boeing 737 or Airbus A320 into your muscle memory based strictly on company seniority. As a new hire at the bottom of the roster, you pay the low seniority tax, flying red eyes, holidays, and back of the book trips that senior pilots won't touch. But your first year major compensation jumps to $100,000. Scaling past $200,000 by year 5, the career you built for a decade finally pays out proportionally to what you sacrificed. You fly longer routes now, tracking international corridors across wide-body flight decks. You navigate global networks, eating hotel breakfasts in rotating cities until you lose track of where you woke up this morning. The job slowly becomes uniform, structured, and safe. Yet, this predictable safety introduces a quiet psychological erosion. When flight becomes an automated monitoring task across 8-hour legs, you realize the raw, dangerous intimacy you had with the sky when you were poor has been traded for corporate comfort and gold stripes. Part 9, Level 8 and 9, the captain and the check airman, the ultimate weight. But corporate comfort and a steady automated cruise are merely a golden cage, keeping your mind soft until seniority finally pushes you into the absolute heavy isolation of final command authority. You bid for captain, and your seniority number is finally high enough to move your entire career across the cockpit layout. The upgrade from first officer to captain is a violent psychological pivot. You shift from an operator who assists to the single entity who decides. The left seat looks identical, but the psychological weight is crushing. Every high consequence variable is yours alone. When to divert through severe weather, when to refuse an unsafe runway, or when to call for a full evacuation, while dispatch claims everything is fine. Your name is on the flight release. Your license is on the line. At 55 years old with 25,000 hours, you have survived engine failures over the Pacific and lightning strikes in dark airspace. Yet you keep these realities silent at dinner parties. The industry eventually selects you as a check airman, transforming your relationship with aviation from execution to systemic gatekeeping. You sit in the right seat evaluating other captains, or inside full motion simulators deciding if a wide-eyed first officer possesses the cold judgment to command 200 souls. Saying no to a pilot who sacrificed a decade for this specific milestone is a heavy emotional burden. You lose sleep over their failed evaluations, but you understand that putting an unready pilot in command carries a catastrophic systemic price. You trade raw adrenaline for bureaucratic safety boards, quietly engineering the invisible procedures that save lives that will never know they were saved. Part 10, Level 10, the retired captain, the final contrail. But engineering the invisible safety architecture of the skies is a finite crusade. And eventually, the inexorable law of retirement forces you to hand over the gatekeeper's keys. You fly your last flight on a Tuesday in October. Your family sitting quietly in the cabin. Upon landing, the traditional water cannon salute arches over your wide-body jet on the taxiway. You shut down the engines for the absolute last time, pausing to memorize the switch layout before walking out into a life without a pre-flight checklist. You go home to Virginia, where the sudden absence of cockpit vibrations leaves your hands feeling strangely uncalibrated. At 4:00 unable to sleep past your internal clock, you sit on the porch with a hot cup of coffee, staring up at a distant white contrail cut across the Atlantic routing. You are entirely invisible to the machine that once defined your existence. Simultaneously, miles away, a 19-year-old kid sits in a run-down flight school lobby with a faded carpet and a wobbly ceiling fan, handing over a credit card with shaking hands. They have no idea what the next 35 years of poverty wages, missed birthdays, and emotional isolation will cost them. The individual aviator vanishes into the ground, but the architecture of the dream remains permanent. The cycle continues. We have traveled from the decaying, fluorescent-lit lobby of a local flight school to the absolute, crushing isolation of global command at 35,000 feet. Through these 10 levels, we didn't just witness a technical progression. We watched a violent, systematic psychological overhaul. Aviation took a romantic dreamer, broke down their biology through spatial disorientation, stripped away their financial comfort through professional poverty, and hollowed out their identity through decades of emotional isolation. Yet, in return, the system refilled them with something permanent, an unshakable cellular competence, and the profound burden of absolute self-reliance. The aviation industry exploits desperation for flight hours, but those grueling layers serve a vital, hidden design. They forge predictive situational awareness and ironclad discipline. When the retired captain sits on a quiet porch in Virginia, completely invisible to the transoceanic machine they once commanded, the true philosophy of the aviator is laid bare. The individual operator eventually vanishes into the ground, but the standardized architecture of the dream remains flawless, seamlessly passing structural knowledge to the next generation. The deepest lesson here is that mastery requires active identity deconstruction. You cannot reach the upper echelons of any complex system without allowing the process to burn away your ego, your dependence on external validation, and your comfort zones. To apply this to your life right now, look at your current struggles, the repetitive grind, the financial friction, or the moments you feel completely incompetent, not as obstacles, but as essential filters. Shift your locus of control entirely inward. Stop waiting for an authority figure to save you. Embrace absolute accountability for your trajectory, and understand that the price of admission to excellence must always be paid upfront and in full. Which level of this journey resonated with your own life? Struggle the most? Please share your perspective in the comments below so we can all learn from each other's experiences. And don't forget to subscribe to Shadow POV to support the channel, and stay tuned for our next simulation.